Today's reading, our book, Our Daily Bread by Francisco Javier by the Spirit Emmanuel. Chapter 144, Make Preparations. Today's reading, He will show you a large upper room all furnished. Make preparations there. Jesus, Luke 22:12. That furnished upper room to which Jesus referred is a perfect symbol of the internal lodging of the soul. That furnished upper room to which Jesus referred is a perfect symbol of the internal lodging of the soul. Viewing nature, which offers such wonderful lessons in all areas of activity, we observe that men await each day always renewing the dispositions of the home. That furnished upper room, here we sweep the waste. Their walls are ornamented. The furniture, usually the same ones, are put through a daily cleaning process. The conscientious individual will recognize that the majority of his actions in the physical experience are involved in incessant preparation for the life that he will face beyond the death of the body. If this occurs in the physical existence on earth, what can we not say about the appropriate spiritual effort for the eternal path? Without a doubt, numerous people will go through each day in an irrational manner, moving about mechanically. They arise from bed, feed the perished body, are absorbed with trifles, then return to sleep again each night. The sincere student does know that he has reached the symbolic upper room of his heart. Although he is not able to change the ideas daily, as occurs with the furniture in the residence, he gives them a new shine frequently by improving the impulses, renovating conceptions, elevating wishes, and always improving the laudable qualities that he already possesses. The individual that is simply a materialist awaits the future of a physical organic death. The spiritual individual awaits the divine master in order to consolidate his personal redemption. Do not abandon, therefore, the upper room of faith, and there within make preparations for the constant ascension. For reflection about today's reading, in today's reading, Emmanuel recommends us to avoid go through each day in an irrational manner. He reminds us to improve our impulses and renovate our conceptions daily in order to prepare ourselves for our ascension to the upper room of faith. Do I go by my day in a mechanical mode, or do I take the time to analyze my daily actions and check on the points I can do better? Prayer. Okay, let's just relax. Dear God, thank you for the opportunity of being here today at Becerra de Meneses. Thank you to our spirit guides and guardian angels for always being by our side. We ask that you bless all those that are sick and in hospitals, in orphanages, and in prisons. We thank you for your guiding light and for peace on earth. So be it. Today's lecture, Chapter 5, Blessed are the Afflicted, Pablo Mora.
All right. Hello. How are you, everybody? It's funny. On Friday, I was talking to a lady that had hip surgery, right? And she had been in a lot of pain and stuff. So how are you? How's everything? So anyway, after that, I had hip pain, right? So I'm walking the whole Friday with hip pain. And all of Saturday, yesterday, right? I was like, oh, man, why is this so hurting? By the way, what chapter am I going to do tomorrow? Blessed are the afflicted, right? So anyway, I woke up this morning without pain, so I was happy. I think it's a joke, a spiritual joke out there, right? So, all right, this chapter is kind of a long chapter. It's actually a very important chapter because it introduces a lot of concepts, concepts of reincarnation, concepts of the law of cause and effect, which is a very important law in spiritism. We reap what we sow, and we have to fix anything that we break spiritually, emotionally in a life. And the concept of multiple lives, that there's more than one life. So that resonates throughout the chapter. Okay, so here's some of the areas that are covered in this chapter. Why are there afflictions in this world? What are their causes, past causes of afflictions, as in past lives, forgetfulness of the past, motives for resignation, suicide and madness. And then there's a huge portion where it's instructions from the spirits to suffer well, badly, evil is and its remedy, happiness is not of this world. We're going to cover some of these things. And there's some incredible ideas presented by the spirits. And I actually had highlighted some of these, but I left my book at home. So I'm going to try and remember. But some of these concepts you can reread this chapter a million times. And each time you're going to pick up something new that, oh, okay, I understand what they were talking about there. So that's kind of a neat thing about the chapter. Okay, so it begins with, it kind of talks about Matthew and Luke, and it talks about what Christ talked about, right? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So that's, when Christ was talking about that on the Sermon on the Mount and stuff, you're like, what is that, These concepts are, and imagine the audience Christ is talking to, they're not like the smartest people in the world morally, and he's introducing these concepts to them, which are really new. And then in Luke, he says, woe unto you that laugh, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe unto you that are full, for you shall hunger. But woe unto you that are rich, for you shall receive your consolation. So there's like, okay, but if I'm rich, why is it bad? Or if I'm poor, why is it good? It doesn't make sense, because even now we're like, okay, I need to get rich, right? And then I'll be happy. These concepts, right? If I have this, I'll be happier. If I have a bigger house, I'll be happier. If I have a richer looking car, I'll be happier, right? All those concepts are very prevalent even today. And they were back then, right? Oh, if I have 100 slaves, I'll be better than I had 50 slaves, things like that. So the assurance given by Jesus for the afflicted on the planet Earth. So in a way, he's kind of giving them hope while he's saying this, but it's a very difficult lesson, right? So that's why he does his storytelling. What do they call his storytelling? Parables. He does all these parables. It's filled with parables so that they understand these concepts. Okay. All right. So was Jesus talking about rewards in this life for all that are afflicted? No. He's talking about future rewards. Okay. Sometimes you can have a reward in this life too, right? And then it's not about this life, right? It's not for all the afflicted. And then how do men go around the earth thinking, right? Men look for happiness. Men and women look for happiness, but they can't seem to be able to find it, okay? Because happiness is internal, and it's from your point of view. I was talking to this guy that had been in a dungeon for 30 years, okay? Naked, and I asked him, how were you able to kind of live for 30 years, in misery, and endure tortures and whatnot, right? How were you able to exist? And he said, because he was selling paintings, right? And all the paintings look the same to me. So I asked him, what is, it would be, the paintings, I should have had a picture of them, but the paintings are of a head, and then inside a head, there was a house and a family and stuff. And the paintings represented where he was when he was in prison. He was living in a world inside his mind, and then the real world didn't exist for him. And that's how he was able to live for 30 years. In fact, he wrote a poetry book that was published. It was very famous in France, on toilet paper that was smuggled out of a prison. And it's an amazing person to and I forget his name, unfortunately. It's terrible. Why some seem to suffer more than others? Why some live in misery? Why is it that nothing seems to work for some? So you ever come across people that they have everything, but they're miserable? or we think they have everything because we're seeing with our eyes and we're not seeing with our mind, right? We're not seeing with our spirit, because on the spirit level, you can live in a hut in the middle of the desert with no water and be truly happy. Be truly happy. You ever seen that show Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmerman? And he goes to different places. So he in one episode he goes to this place in the desert where everybody, lives basically in a hut, and their clothes is mud. They smear mud in a little straw, but they look perfectly happy, and they come in, and the huts were made out of poop, to give you an idea, mixed with straw. So he goes in, and they were the happiest, healthiest people you could think of, and it just calls to mind. And for him, he's kind of very open-minded, but other people are like, I'm not gonna walk in there, right? I'm not gonna step in there. But it's a concept, right? Happiness. You could be like a dictator that has everything, and still it's not enough, you know. So when Christ is talking about these things, he's also appealing to those concepts. They also talk a lot about, hey, well, we'll go cover it, but what happens after you die? Because if you're blessed by material possessions in this world, it truly is a blessing and a challenge. Okay. And then when you leave this world, reality may hit you in the face. So that's important. So really, a lot is in our minds. Even suffering, even the extent of suffering can be in our minds. We'll go over different scenarios, but it talks about causes of suffering, and it helps us distinguish between real happiness and earthly happiness. And it's in many ways it's very unique to Spiritism. It's not unique to all religions, because these concepts you find in Buddhism, you find them in Hinduism, you find it in Christianity, you find it in the Quran also. But some people have eyes to see, and some people do not have eyes to see. And as the soul matures, it can understand these concepts and see them in writing. But if your soul is not ready and not mature, it could read 100 verses and not catch it. Okay, that's why I say sometimes when you read this chapter 5, 10 times, you always catch something you didn't the time before. Okay, so let's consider this. If God is infinitely just and merciful, would he treat us with partiality, that is, privilege some? Therefore, if the vicissitudes of earthly life must have a cause, it must also have a just cause. So God is great. Why would God create a world with so much misery and a world with war and a war with hunger, right? You would think if he's an all-seeing God, right? And that's one way to see the world, right? And we can also see the world as beautiful, full of flowers and butterflies, full of people. The world is full of people that are nice, right? You ever been? You just try. There are most people are nice, but a lot of people can see the world. Man, most people are not nice, especially if you watch the news every night, right? If you watch the news every night, everything is bad, right? So, but most of the world is actually good. Okay, so why would God create such a world, right? And in Spiritism, one of the things that explains is that this world was made for us, for our spirits. Our spirits are in need of a world like this. This is a world where we come to be challenged. This is a world where we create our challenges before coming here to experience them. And some of us are forced into this world because we're either too ignorant, too hardened. And there are people that love us, that enable us to come into this world so that we can change our identities and be able to expiate or reform ourselves in this world. And that's why the law of cause and effect, okay? So there is justice in the world. If you kill someone in this world, or you rape somebody in this world, the odds are is you're going to come back into this world and you're going to suffer the same fate, so that you can understand the ramifications of your actions. If you kidnap somebody's son, you will be a mother whose son is kidnapped, right? So that's one of the ways they see this world, a world that is for expiation, a world of trials and tribulations. It's a world where the soul is strengthened. Okay, it's also a place where the soul can collect new karma, new debts. Okay, so you have to be careful too. You have to be careful what you ask. You could say, well, my challenge in coming into this world is I want to be the richest man in the world. And they say, okay, you're going to be a very rich man. Okay. But that could be one of the biggest challenges you can have in this world, because people kill, people cheat, people steal, people lie, people send people to prison to become rich. Okay. And eventually they will look back. They will look back. They will be shown why it was wrong. So you have to be very careful about the challenges that you face in this world. Okay. So as far as cause and effect, causes can be from prior lives, right? We signed up for it. We have the resources to deal with it according to our moral development. Causes from this life, we are elected to add after reincarnating by making use of free will rights. So you just, hopefully this is the one. This is where I want to show. So prior causes of afflictions, right? Thus, through the plurality of existences and the function of the earth as an expiatory world, one can explain the anomalies displayed in the distribution of fortune and misfortune between good and bad persons on this world. This anomaly exists in appearance only because it is considered from the point of view of the present life. However, if we elevate ourselves by means of thought so as to embrace a series of existences, we will see that everyone receives a share they deserve without harm to what will be given to them in the spirit world. And that's God's justice is never broken. Okay, so just in there are several things, several concepts, like the existences, that how many existences will we live until we get it right? Right? As many as it takes. Okay, it doesn't matter, because we're talking about an infinite soul, a soul that is infinite in its lifetime, and this life is only a little blip in its maturing, and it's in a stage of maturing all through it. It can take thousands of lives. Okay, and the faster we get on with the program, the better it is. It'll be less suffering for us. So when we look at this world from, and in here it says elevate ourselves. However, if we elevate ourselves by means of thoughts, so you ever try and elevate yourself? Huh? That's a concept that's being placed here. How do you elevate yourself? Right? So I'll tell you a little story about a dream I had recently, right? So I was working in this dream. I was part of an ambulance, right? So I'm working in an ambulance, right? And we go to the scene of a murder. There had been a murder, right? And the two murderers were still there, right? So one of them was a person I really hated, and I said, oh my God, here he is all alone. I want to grab him and strangle him. I'm part of the ambulance crew, and I'm looking at the murderer and I say, I'm going to take him and I'm going to strangle him, right? Here's my chance. There's nobody around. Nobody's going to know. And revenge, right? Is revenge, right? Because of things he had done to me. So now, a lot of times when we're victims, right? One of the ways that we can complicate our debt is revenge, right? It's a trap. Because if we take revenge, then now we're going to have a debt, only to find out things we didn't know about that person that we killed. Maybe they were a child of ours in a past life and taking revenge on us. That's why we were a victim. But we're not going to know it until we die. Anyway, so just as I'm about to kill him, right? It hits me. I go, oh, hold on. I have to elevate my thoughts. I thought that in the dream, right? I have to elevate my thought, right? And I go, I have to forgive this person, right? Totally different, not a natural human, because we're, when we're emotional and stuff. So I said, I started praying, right? And they left, and we cleaned up the mess, right, of the victim that was there, right? And I didn't get back in the ambulance. I'm walking home, and I see a lady, and I said, I just elevated my thoughts. I forgive the guy, right? And all of a sudden, I flew up into the sky in the dream, and then I saw the lights of Miami. I said, I'm just going to go back home so I can wake up. Interesting, right? So when they're talking about this concept, not everybody's going to understand that concept, because these concepts are not discussed in many other places. The concept of elevating your thoughts. Yeah, we hear about Christ teaching, turn the other cheek, right? Things like that. But we don't really, we're taught if they hit you, you hit back, right? Isn't that like a common teaching, right? Very seldom are we taught, forgive. I mean, we're taught it, but we don't take it to heart, okay? And it's only later on in life that we take it to heart, maybe when it's too late. Okay, so I thought this was very important. This comes right out of that chapter. Prior causes of afflictions. So let me just go back a little where I was. Okay. So, but what is affliction anyway? Affliction means we are not in harmony with the world, God, and ourselves. Anxiety, depression, melancholy, low self-esteem, worries, fears, personality disorders, and others. Those are some of the, you could also have physical afflictions, right? Actually, depression, anxiety are physical, as well as mental. All right. And they can cause us to feel terrible. What are some of the common causes of affliction? It is a consequence of our character and the way we conduct ourselves throughout our lives. Pride and selfishness, hate and rivalry, ambitious jealousy, lack of discipline, lack of perseverance, lack of moderation. These are all go in there. And not only in this life, but in prior lives. For example, lack of discipline can go through many lives until we learn, hate and rivalry. Hate and rivalry is a huge theme in human existence throughout the world. I mean, we came from the caveman era, right? Which it was a time of do or die, right? Fight to live, right? So you're not going to learn it in one life. The spirit is not going to mature in one life. So it has to go through a series. So it goes from the caveman to the farmer, to setting up families, to setting up civilization, to cooperating with people, to making alliances, to saying, hey, maybe it's more productive if we don't conduct war. Maybe it's more productive if we cooperate on this. And so there's an evolution in process that goes on. But these are the things that our spirits are evolving. And so we're in different states, right? Some spirits are new and they're coming into this world. We right now have some crazy people running around in the Middle East, right? Cutting people's heads off. That's a huge, for them, it's a huge debt that they're piling on, and other people, they're like, okay, maybe we should talk about it. Some people say, well, let's go to war with Russia. And other people say, well, maybe we should talk about it. Let's see if we can talk to people and see. So you see all of this going on in the world around us, and so we need to try and understand it and not be swept away by it. Recently I saw there was a video, or there's a movie called The World According to Dick Cheney, right? It was very interesting, very, very interesting on the thought processes of different people in terms of going to war. And I really recommend you see it, because it's an interesting study in the way people make decisions. And then when they look back on the decisions, would I have done things differently? And a lot of people say, oh, yeah. Some people had gut feelings and they didn't go with their gut feelings, So that's interesting. Okay. So, and men they always use men, but it's men and women, okay? So it was a sign of the times, okay? And men is only unhappy when they deviate from the laws of God, ignorance and faith. consciousness. Your conscience bothers people. It's amazing how many people have consciences. They actually decide to do wrong. They knew they shouldn't have done wrong, but they did wrong anyway, and then they regret doing it. Right? Okay, so chapter 5 of the gospel wants us to understand happiness, help us find relative happiness in this life, and secure happiness for the future lives. So we're going to be talking about happiness. And before we do that, I wanted to, in this chapter, there's a section that talks about our tribulations, and why there's tribulations. All right, so it says that basically, tribulations are imposed on hardened and ignorant spirits so that they can mature their souls. There are repentant spirits. Like, we're probably all repentant. Who knows what we were doing before coming to this world? Who knows what we were? If we were men, maybe we were women. If we were women, maybe you were men. We don't know what we did, but we're back here, and probably for the reason that we're repentant spirits. We did something that we need to fix in this world, or we did something to people that we need to fix in this world, okay? And it's freely chosen by us prior to coming here. And that's a huge decision, because when you come here, you're deciding to, okay, I'm gonna change my personality for the most part, right? Not totally, but I'm gonna change my identity. So I'm going to go from being Pablo to being a Maria in another life. And that's a big decision, right? I'm not going to be me anymore. I'm going to come back as a baby and start all over, okay? Certain things are going to be ingrained in me, and I'm going to ask a couple of you to help me out, remember certain things so I don't make the same mistake, but I'm coming back to try and fix what I did. That's a huge decision, and it may take a few lives for you to make that decision to come back here, but it's going to be done. Some people freely choose to come here. They don't have to come here, but they're going to come here to educate. They're going to come here on a mission, right? So when you look at Christ figures, or you look at, there's tons of examples throughout the world of people trying to do good, and they're very focused on what they're doing. They're here on missions. So, and what is their purpose? It's to repair past evils, to do a do-over, That's a big one. Let's do a do-over. All right. Expiations and purification of the spirit. So expiations are, I kill somebody. I want to be that person's mother, raise him right, and give him every opportunity that I took away from him. Right. That would be an example. Purification of the spirit. There are spirits that want to further purify themselves, further elevate their thoughts. Okay, so imagine yourself when you were a kid in high school or in grammar school, and compare your thoughts today, right? You just like you elevated physically your thoughts from the time you were a kid, there's time periods now when you're going to elevate your thoughts past this earth to a spiritual higher plane, right? And in those higher planes, those spirits seek to further elevate their thoughts, okay? And one of the ways they do it is by coming into this world, taking on challenges, and further purifying their spirits. So those are some of the reasons that the spirits give us in this book. Let us render thanks to God, who out of divine goodness grants humans the possibility of reparation and does not irrevocably condemn them for their first wrong. So here it was talking about one of the reasons for reincarnating. If you're just given one life and you mess it up and you're sent to hell for the rest of eternity, that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense at all. Yes, it's justification, but it's like garbage. Delete, boom, didn't work out, right? That's not how it works out. What mediumship and what spiritism teaches us is that there's hundreds of thousands of spirits, millions running around in suffering, who really need to come back to this earth so that they can expiate and mature their souls and elevate their thoughts. I don't know how many, I don't have numbers, but I would say that there's huge numbers of spirits on this earth that haven't been able to elevate their thoughts. And so they roam this earth, interacting with us, unbeknownst to us. And we're in the process of maturing our minds, correct? So how we conduct our minds is very important, all right? Because that's our challenge. And we need to show an example to them and elevate our thoughts. Okay, let's go. Happiness. Payday, right? So when you die, upon disincarnating, reality is perceived and we get our just rewards, right? It is our payday or not. You know, they say, well, you were rich. You had that big yacht, you had all the women, you had all the men, you had diamonds and jewels and treasures. You were a king, you were a queen, right? So understanding the brevity of life, or going back to payday, or you were a person that was responsible, and yeah, maybe you had a very materially poor life, but you were rich, right? In a family that loved you and cared for you. So that's your payday. So how are you going to elevate your thoughts, right? Material possessions are not going to elevate your thoughts. It's what's in the mind that elevates your thoughts. So you're rich according to how you think. You could be very happy with a job and beautiful thoughts, or you can be very rich materially and have evil thoughts. It's just how you switch that mind. Life is very brief. Tribulations, you should know, are temporary. So we all go through troubles. We can't lose heart. Some people try to commit suicide, right? But there's no escape. What you fail to accomplish in this life, you're coming back to fix. Okay. And there's a wonderful book. I don't know who wrote it, right? But I think it's called The Valley of the Suicide. It's one of the largest books I've read. Have any of you read that? Memories of a Suicide. Incredible book. A little depressing, okay? But, in the end, it's fascinating. It's fascinating what you learn out of there. Like, okay, that's not for me, for sure. That's not the way. It's one of the things you learn in that book. So, but know that tribulations could be 30 years, like in the case of the prisoner, because he would have died in his mind happy, even though he was going through that physical hell, right? Lucky for him, he was able to get out of it. But some people have died, some people stay, in medium sessions, I come across spirits that have been in a dungeon for 1,500 years still. And you find them and you try and get them out of that dungeon to ease their suffering, hey, the gate is open, it's over, it's the year 2014, it's not 15 anything, it's time for you to get out, And it's amazing. It's time to elevate your thoughts beyond your terror, beyond your fear. And sometimes fear is a prisoner, right? Mm-hmm. Fear, in fact, there's a lot of fear here, right? In Miami, in general. I work with a lot of people that they live in Fort Lauderdale, and they're terrified of Miami, right? Like, oh, I come to work here, but I'm not going to go anywhere in Miami, right? They think Miami is a horrible place. It's not. It's not. They live in fear and they limit themselves. A lot of people limit themselves, right? Some people, well, no, I'm not going to speak English. And people say, I'm not going to speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. They limit themselves to experiences and stuff like that. So it's important for them. Their tribulations are all made up in their minds, okay? I mean, there are tribulations, right? You can get mugged, right? But, you get over it, right? You get a little while, there could be crime is a terrible trauma. Trauma is terrible. Accidents are terrible. Being crippled is terrible. All those, having a child that has special needs can be looked at as terrible. But you see these cases, they're examples of people that are given a challenge, right? And they are able to surpass the challenge. Just recently on the news, right? This is good news, right? There was a woman who they found was shoveling snow in her electric kind of paraplegic chair. She was shoveling the snow outside. So when they interviewed the woman, right? The woman, even though she could hardly move, her mind was totally, I can do, I am free. She had a child. She got married. She had a business, all on her own without being able to move. She was a can-do person, you know. So that's the challenge. So as spiritists, we have to understand this, and we're given, and we can see those and say, hey, no matter what, I am somehow either mentally going to surpass whatever comes onto me, because I am spirit first. I am spirit before I come here. These challenges, some of them are self-imposed, and some of them are chosen for us. And I know the light at the end of the tunnel is my payday. And I'm not going to forget that, because I know it's there, and I have faith that it's there. In fact, I am 100% completely sure that it's there. I'm 1,000% sure that it's there. That's what we know. That's what our studies teach us, right? All right. I'm always like, I'm not going to loop in the past. You know, people loop. My mother loops all the time. Your father did this to me 25 years ago, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. You know, you ever saw Seinfeld? You know, George? George's parents? So think about George's parents. They're always looping, right? Right? And you got to go beyond that. You got to, you know, new things. Okay, so let's go over some of these things that the Spirit's teaching was kind of telling. I'm glad I didn't outline it, because time is rushing, right? But I left the book. I was going to read a whole sections to you that I was like, oh my God, this is so juicy. You got to, but I really recommend that you read these sections. So we already talked a little bit about suffering well or badly. It depends on the mind. Evil is not a remedy. You know, it's actually goes the opposite way. Happiness is what we make it. And, you know, when I say happiness is not of this world, yes, I think it is of this world, but there's a greater happiness in the spiritual world. But know that because you're in this world, it doesn't mean that happiness is denied to you. Happiness is what your spirit makes it, okay? Happiness could be a walk in the forest or a fishing trip. You just have to realize why it's happening, like, whoa, I'm in the state of happiness, right? Or seeing a loved one you haven't seen in a long time. Okay. Losing loved ones, premature deaths. Basically, the spirits are saying, hey, it's only premature. Someone that passes away before you do means they completed their mission here. This world is not eternal, you know. Some people want it to be eternal. Some people want to live 150 years, 200 years. And they have aging clinics and useful clinics. And, you know, the average person dies between the age of 72 and 74. That's the average. Okay, so that means definitely more than 50% of us leave after 72 years, right? Some people last longer. They live 90, 100, 110. The oldest person I ever came across was 108. But, you know, I don't know what the Guinness Book of World Records is, but it doesn't reach 120. I don't think so. Okay, so just because it's not eternal, so you have to prepare your soul for what comes next, okay? So you'll have loved ones that leave before you, right? But that doesn't mean that they're dead. It means they're in spirit now. They're disincarnated. And now they're trying to elevate their thoughts, okay? If he had been a good man, he would have died. Okay, it talks about how, you know, only the bad seem to achieve in the world, right? And the good ones die, right? Well, you don't know. You don't know. Maybe that good man died because he had achieved his purposes here. That bad one is still being given chances to see if he changes. We pick some voluntary trials. What is true misfortune, right? True misfortune is that you're given a life, an opportunity, and you fail to take advantage of it, all right? And it doesn't mean that we all have to be missionaries, you know, feeding the hungry, starving people in Africa. No, it means that you say hello to your neighbors, and that you're kind, and if somebody falls, you try and help them, and that you help those that are less fortunate than you. That's what, when we talk about misfortune. Melancholy, right? it's very easy to get depressed, right? Sometimes depression is a physical thing and we need medicine for it. But sometimes it's our own creation, and this is the thing where it comes elevating your thoughts is so important. Recently, it was like 3 hours before I had to give a major report at my job, right? And I hadn't done anything. Because I was too busy doing other things. And I was like, I said, okay, in 3 hours, I'm going to have everything ready. Right? In 3 hours. So the first hour passed by and I was still going, oh, no, I don't have it all together. How am I going to get it together, right? And it's funny because I had a partner in another place and she was going through the same thing. She was like, we don't have it because we were busy doing other things, right? And I thought she's gonna put it together, get it all done, right? Get her end of the business kind of done. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna have to cancel this. It's gonna look bad, but it's better that I cancel it than I look bad at the meeting, right? But then I had a thought, right? Something said, because I was very anxious, play some music was a thought. And I was hearing a melody in my mind, right? So I say, you know what? Took out the phone, put on some earphones, stuck it in my head. And in 2 hours, I got it done and presented and everything. I was like, woo, right? So then I met her like the next day, right? This is in the same meeting with the lady with the hip, right? So I tell her, so did you have your meeting? She goes, oh no, I had a crisis. I was crying, blah, 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 blah. And it didn't go through. She canceled everything. And I said, man, I would have thought she had done it. But when we talk about melancholy and anxiety and stuff like that, always remember to pray, to center yourself. We're going to go over some of these things real quick. But you have to center yourself and find serenity in the midst of disaster, okay? And if I could say anything, in the midst, it could be a child going cuckoo with drugs, right? It could be a husband cheating on you or a wife cheating on you. In the midst of whatever disaster, financial disaster, whatever, which is very common, right? Center yourself and remember that you are a spirit, that you're here, that this is only a temporary challenge, and that as long as you keep yourself together, everything's going to be all right, right? Isn't that a song? That's a song. Everything's going to be all right, right? Okay, anyway, so just know that. Should we end our neighbor's probation? Well, say a prayer, and if you can help them materially or spiritually, up to you. Would it be so we can't, God puts challenges on other people, but if you see somebody suffering there and you can do something about it, you can offer to help, right? Would it be illicit to hasten the death of somebody incurably sick who is suffering? No, we don't go around killing people, okay? All right. And I could tell you, I've seen people rot in beds, literally, physically, become liquid in a bed, okay? But it's not for us to choose to end. And there's multiple cases of crazy healthcare workers going around being judged on people like, oh, I can't see them suffering. Okay, you don't want to see them suffering, don't work there. But it's their choice, okay? It's not ours, okay? Sacrificing one's own life. Okay, well, everything is about intent, okay? So if you're going to sacrifice your life for somebody, literally, it's why are you doing it? If you're doing it because my name is going to go down in history, that's probably not a good reason for doing it, okay? You got to have right reasons for doing it. So intent is important. And intent is a huge word because we as human beings and spirits, we are seen by the spirit world by our intent. It's not what you're doing on the outside. You could be volunteering in a bread line, but the spirits are seeing you for your intent. What is your intent with everything? So they laugh at us because we don't see our intents. Or some of us perceive intents, people's real intents, but the spirits can actually see it. It radiates in our soul, in our aura, in whatever, in our energy. You ever met people that are very nice, but their energy is like, there's something weird about this person, right? Right? So the spirits see that, they actually feel it, So that is your intent. Can you make your own suffering useful to others? Maybe, right? But again, it's about intent. All right. All right. So if you look at two rocks, right? You're like, oh my God, look at those rocks. They're going to fall on me. Or you could say, oh, what beautiful rock, right? Or what are we going to do with these rocks, right? I have to climb them. They're going to fall on me. So how you see those rocks is how you see your life, right? You can say, you know what? We can make it into a statue, right? Great rock for a statue, right? Or look at the beautiful things that have been created with rocks and stones, right? So just be aware of that. It's how you see things. And sometimes you see situations and you misinterpret the situation with people. You misinterpret people. Or somebody tells you something about a person that's totally untrue, and you carry that judgment in you. Be very, very careful. So before the big rock, don't get stuck thinking of the weight. Instead, think of the beautiful statue that could come out of it, that came out of Andre Luis. Also, who was a famous Michelangelo? I think it was Michelangelo. He said he would see a stone, and within the stone, he would see the statue, and he would carve the statue out. Okay. So happiness is the ultimate aspiration of humans. For most humans, some people, their aspiration is to make everybody miserable, right? But most people want to be happy. But we have lots of questions about it. Does happiness really exist? What is it like? So yes, it does exist. Does happiness exist on Earth? Yes, it does, though it can be relative, right? Over that. Where can we find it? I could tell you it's within ourselves, right? Look inside. All right. What does it consist of? Well, there's hedonism. How much do you own on this earth, right? Then there's cynicism, detached to material things. Stoicism, inner peace is permanent regardless of what's your earthly situation, and is always in sync with the cosmic laws, right? So the people, look for happiness in different ways. It is not what you possess or don't, but whether or not you are possessed by the external goods. That's a good saying. I don't know who created this PowerPoint originally. Do you know? No, but it's a very good PowerPoint. I added some things, but I used it as a base. What does being happy mean? The top desire of all human beings, not a mean to, but an end. It is the supreme realization of men. Happiness, I could tell you right now that if your spirits were picked up by Christ right now, just collected, and you were automatically brought up, right? You would be in a state of grace and happiness, all-knowing, all in peace, all relaxed, okay? And then when you were put back, you would feel that feeling, but you would remember it and say, that's where I'm trying to get to, right? The spirit was created to be happy. We're all on earth to work and to earn happiness. The purpose of our incarnation on earth is to work on our vicissitudes, overcome our challenges, exceed our limitations. I would agree. True happiness to start with is being alive. After that, it is the great joy of being conscious about our fragility and of the infinite possibilities of moral progress, which comes from our courage to achieve self-elimination. That was from Joanna de la Angelis. Why are we happy or unhappy? So the ego, the self, leads us into selfishness, pride, all those things. Realize the new creature in Christ, which means a transition from the horizontal, elusive ego to the vertical and truthful self. Confusion between true self and the physical, emotional self. The physical you, I have a headache, he died. These are different states of our nervous system. The emotional you, humanity can lead to suffering, victim, objectification, not the captain of our destiny. And the spiritual you, happiness and unhappiness come from our own substance and not from something outside of us. Happiness cannot depend on something external to us. It's all about inside. Even in love relationship, it's inside. Because if you really love someone, that person doesn't love you and saying, well, I need to go. You say, well, I love you. Go ahead. Whatever makes you happy. Okay. Give up your happiness and you will be happy. If the selfish could be truly happy, then the universal law would be compromised. Love God above all and your neighbor like yourself. Lose your life if you want to earn it. Okay. But the key thing there that God puts in there, that Christ puts in there, love God above all and your neighbor like yourself, and treat others like you would have them treat you. Those are key components there. For the ignorant, happiness comes from receiving, but he does not find it there. The wise find it in giving, the happiness he was not looking for. There is much more happiness in giving than there is in receiving. That is very true. Look first for the kingdom of God and his justice, and everything else will be given to you. Clean the house, social vices, moral pollution, right? That's ourselves, our inner selves. Find the difference between happiness, unhappiness, pleasure, suffering. This resides in our soul, happiness, unhappiness. This resides in our ego and nervous, pleasure, suffering. Look beyond the horizons of earthly life, believe in immortality, and harmonize life with the content of such faith. Common obstacles to a faith live with the ethic: envy, luxury, pride, pursuit of terrain assets, need for applause and recognition, desire for excessive material comfort, or selfishness in all of its forms. Happiness is worth all sacrifices. Okay, so you see those obstacles, right? And you see when people negotiate, I'm going to get my way. I'm going to get my way. You see it in political negotiation, right? When either side does not want to give up because of ego, there's no cooperation and you don't move forward, whether it's a government, whether it's a relationship, whatever. Establish and keep permanent serenity. This is for those who know their true self and know that no external factors can make them happy or unhappy. Those that are strong enough to keep a stable spiritual equilibrium. That's our challenge, and it's our teaching. Be the captain of your nerves. The bad things people do to me don't make me bad. What makes me bad are the bad things I do to them. What gets to me through my mouth don't make me impure. All right. No one can offend myself. One can only offend what belongs to me. So Gandhi, when asked if he had forgiven his enemies, he said no, because no one ever offended him. And Emmanuel says, be offended is much different than offending someone. To be offended is much different than to offend someone. And that's very true. When I get an insult, right, I kind of smile in my head. Because a lot of these insults are, they want to establish tit for tat. Tat, 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 tat. It happens with children, right? Tat, 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 tat. In our relationship with teenagers. Not so much children, right? Don't offend. Just kind of smile and pray for them. Okay? All right. So free yourself from the superfluous. The ego does not know the concept of enough. The more I get, the more I want, is the field where more easily prosper the weed of dissatisfaction and unhappiness. The more a man possesses in the material world, the more vulnerable he becomes because he lives the insatiable wish of accumulating more and more each time. He lives in fear of losing everything. If you want to be happy, learn to be satisfied with what is necessary so that the superfluous does not bring your dissatisfaction and unhappiness. We live in a society that loves to gather material possessions, and those material possessions don't identify us. They don't define us. Just remember that. Okay. And the millionaires of happiness are those that differentiate happiness and pleasure, or unhappiness and suffering. They will never understand why men of this nature can be millionaires of happiness. All right. So they're happy from inside. Price to be paid, voluntary renouncement. There are men who are made slaves. There are men who decided to be free. There are men who decided to make themselves slaves. Those are the men that are free of all internal slavery, who can voluntarily devote themselves to be slaves of an external cause for the love of humanity. Okay, so when you look at it, and there's many books of it, you'll see in the books they talk about slaves. There are slaves that they don't want to be slaves and they kill the masters, and there are other slaves that are kind of looking at the big picture, or they don't feel slaves. It's all the God experience. That's all. Nothing can free up men from constant insecurity and uncertainty as to their destiny except one thing: the belief in God. Individual phenomena, all mystic, never social. Religions, doctrines may help, may explain, but can never do it for you. When a man has the God experience, he can dispense everything else as secondary. But when he doesn't, a man or a woman, okay? But when he does not, or when they do not have the God experience, nothing of all those other things can resolve his key goal, achieve happiness. So to say and mean to be your wishes done here on earth as they are in heaven becomes impossible to the man who did not have the God experience. The God experience coincides with the experience of our true self. The Apostle Paul, the Spirit of God inhabits each of us. Therefore, experiencing our true self is the same as experiencing God. The perfect harmony between our true self and the divine reality is happiness. Okay, and thank you for that. All right. So let's say a prayer, right? Keep going. All right. All right. So close your eyes, relax yourselves, and I want you to imagine the face of Christ before us and his arms as he extends them in an embrace and sends his energetic love to each one of us. And this beautiful love and vibration enters your mind and your soul and your lives so that it allows you to realize happiness and it allows you to elevate your thoughts in the midst of challenge so that serenity enters your heart and you feel strong and within yourself with happiness in your heart. Que así sea. And you can open your eyes back, keep that in your hearts. Thank you. So next is weekly announcements. You think you're going to say the announcements? All right, good. I'll let you go. Thank you very much.